This is an interesting story that I've been following since it began. Accused of killing a Gambino mob boss, he's presenting a novel defense. Anthony Comello is obsessed with conspiracy theories. His paranoia is being litigated in a Staten Island court. And here is Anthony Comello with a giant Q on his hand in court, and we'll see what that's all about as we go along here. 4 days after pulling off the most high-profile mob killing in decades, Anthony Comello sat down with New York Police Department detectives and told them that the CIA had infiltrated the mafia, and he added the government was spying on him. He had put his phone in a copper bag to protect it from satellites, he told them, and Democratic operatives in Washington were doing business with Joaquin Guzman Loera, the Mexican drug kingpin known as El Chapo. From the beginning here, we have the association of Democrats with illegal activity in the context of someone associating themselves with Q on the quote-unquote right, so it can be associated with the far right, and all conspiracy theories likewise can be associated with the far right accordingly. The same game they've been playing for years now, since they turned President Trump into the conspiracy theorist president. And for those of you who are unaware of everything that I'm discussing right now, I went over all of this in a video titled President Trump, the Alternative Media, Alt-Right, and the Evolution of Fake News. So if you have not listened to this video, I would recommend it just to get an idea and a foundation for what I'll be discussing here. In the 9 months since that conversation, Mr. Comello, 25, has claimed to his lawyer that he killed Francesco Calli because the mob boss was part of the deep state, a member of a liberal cabal working to undermine President Trump. At one court appearance, Mr. Comello scrawled on his hand a symbol and phrases associated with far-right conspiracy theory QAnon. Now, Mr. Comello's paranoia is being litigated in a Staten Island court where he is charged with the murder of Mr. Calli, known as Frankie Boy. His lawyer has taken the first steps in a legal battle that hinges on a question made for the internet age. At what point does belief in a far-right conspiracy theory make you legally insane? Incredible that we've reached the stage now where it's bleeding into quote-unquote mainstream reality to the point where they're now posing the question, at what point are you insane when you believe in a far-right quote-unquote conspiracy theory? So you see the machinations of the system at work here, how it's been molding this caricature idea of what a conspiracy theorist is, painting that picture in the mind's eye so that it could eventually be tarred and feathered with labels like legally insane. And just as further background, in this case, Comello is using insanity as a defense, which is why this question is now being litigated. And that takes on a whole life of its own when you get into the story itself, where there's chatter in wiretaps about perhaps the killing was motivated by not being able to date the mob boss's daughter, and there's all sorts of things that are going on in the background regarding his alleged confession to this, and all of the usual red flags that you find in mainstream stories like this. But anyway, how the crime's three major components, an aimless drifter from Staten Island, the underboss of the Gambino crime family, and a far-right internet conspiracy theory, collided on a dark street in Tug Hill has perplexed law enforcement officials and mob watchers alike. Conspiracy theories and disinformation campaigns have seen something of a renaissance with the rise of social media, in turn becoming embedded in modern political discourse. But while millions have read unsupported theories propounded in dark corners of the internet, and I've gone over this language before too, you know, the way they choose their words, unsupported, and dark corners of the internet, some have been prompted to act violently. In December 2016, Edgar Madison Welch, 31, traveled from North Carolina to Washington, D.C., and began shooting inside of a family pizza restaurant after reading an unfounded internet conspiracy theory that claimed Democratic candidates were running a child prostitution ring in its basement. In October 2018, Caesar Sayoc Jr. mailed a series of pipe bombs to prominent Democrats and others he believed were members of the deep state. Mr. Welch and Mr. Sayoc eventually pleaded guilty and apologized for their actions and were sentenced to federal prison. Neither used an insanity defense, but legal experts say their crimes showed how conspiracy theories can influence people. When they perpetuate conspiracy theories online, it's combustible, said Rick Allen Ross, the founder of the Cult Education Institute, who has studied far-right conspiracies. That fuel ignites when someone who's disturbed finds the substance of their conspiracy theories. Still, most of the people who believe in conspiracy theories are perfectly sane and never commit a crime, experts on the insanity defense said. Even people with these conspiracy theories certainly act on them very rarely, said Michael Perlin, a professor at New York Law School who specializes in mental disability law. Mr. Comello's lawyer, Robert Gottlieb, has maintained that his client was deeply deluded by conspiracy theories. He went to Mr. Calley's home to arrest him and turn him over to the military, then shot him when he resisted being taken into custody. He ardently believed that Francesco Calley, a boss in the Gambino crime family, was a prominent member of the deep state and, accordingly, an appropriate target for a citizen's arrest. At the time, Mr. Gottlieb said those delusions were evidence that Mr. Comello was unfit to stand trial and instead should be given psychiatric treatment. Prosecutors have proceeded in court as if Mr. Comello is mentally competent and can be held responsible for his actions. At a hearing in October, the lead prosecutor, Wanda de Oliveira, said that Mr. Comello's mind was crystal clear when he waived his right to a lawyer during his interview with detectives. I don't know why anyone would ever do that, so again, that's a little suspicious detail. She argued that Mr. Comello appeared rational in the interview. He gave careful thought, for instance, to one question and asked for it to be repeated before answering. If you watch the defendant while he comes into the room, his physical condition, his mannerisms, he waits when he is talked to and spoken to. He responds normally. How Mr. Comello came to associate Mr. Calley with far-right political conspiracy theories, which typically target Democratic politicians, because of course this is the point of the conspiracy theories, as I've gone over before, or the way that they spin their version of the conspiracy theories. It's a part of maintaining the left-right paradigm. Remains unclear. On an Instagram page associated with him and identified in court filings, Mr. Comello posted memes and symbols associated with QAnon. The theory, promulgated by an anonymous poster known as Q, is based on unfounded claims that a legion of undercover agents exists within the government fighting against an entrenched bureaucracy that is secretly plotting against the Trump administration and its supporters. So this was the original article that came out, I believe, I think this one is from December. Yeah, but this happened in July. It happened in the summer. I'm not sure exactly when off the top of my head, but it's been going on for a decent amount of time now, and there was just recently an update from a couple days ago. Conspiracist accused in Gambino boss killing goes on bizarre courtroom rants. The QAnon conspiracy theorist accused of killing a mafia kingpin ranted wildly in court on Friday about an alleged CIA program called Operation Mockingbird and possessing evidence of global crime syndicates. Anthony Comello said during a hearing on Staten Island that he has evidence stored on his phone of worldwide human trafficking and drug smuggling rings. I just want to say there is a lot on my phone and a lot of data about drug smuggling, human sex trafficking all over the country, Comello said. I have everything from Australia to Ukraine to Italy to Russia, he continued. Comello launched into the bizarre screed after his lawyer, Robert Gottlieb, asked Staten Island Supreme Court Justice William Garnett if his client could speak in court. Good luck, Wanda. Operation Mockingbird, Comello said to Assistant DA Wanda de Oliveira. So you have this person openly referring to a well-established Freedom of Information Act CIA program, Operation Mockingbird, and it's now being reported in the New York Post. It's like common knowledge now that is associated with stories like this so that it can be discounted as a far-right conspiracy theory. And then it finishes by saying that Comello is due back in court on April 20th, so we'll have to wait a while to get an update on where this case is headed. But just an interesting little story that's going on in the background of the media. And it's mentioned in articles like this that try to paint a wider picture of what's going on. This is what happens when QAnon seeps from the web to the offline world. This is also QAnon conspiracy theory creeps into mainstream politics, and it's all being put into the media at the same time by separate authors. President Donald Trump was more than halfway through his speech at a rally in Milwaukee when one of his hand gestures caught the eye of a supporter standing in the packed arena. The 51-year-old woman believed the president had traced the shape of the letter Q with his fingers as a covert signal to followers of QAnon, a right-wing pro-Trump conspiracy theory. She turned to the couple on her right and excitedly asked, "Did you see the Q?" "He just did it," asked Diane Jacobson of Racine, Wisconsin. "Was that a Q?" added Jacobson's husband. "I think it was," replied their new friend Chrissy. The Jacobsons met Chrissy and her husband Paul hours earlier in the line to get into the January 14th rally. The couples bonded over their shared interest in QAnon, which centers on the baseless belief that Trump is waging a secret campaign against enemies in the deep state and a child sex trafficking ring run by satanic pedophiles and cannibals. I mean, it's just amazing that sentence in the Associated Press, like it's no big deal now. This is how far the normalization of these subjects has come through the association with quote-unquote far-right movements like QAnon and the Trump presidency. What started as an online obsession for the far-right fringe has grown beyond its origins in a dark corner of the internet. QAnon has been creeping into the mainstream political arena for more than a year. The trend shows no sign of abating as Trump fires up his re-election campaign operation, attracting a loyal audience of conspiracy theorists and other fringe groups to his raucous rallies. Trump has retweeted QAnon promoting accounts. Followers flock to Trump's rallies wearing clothes and hats with QAnon symbols and slogans. This is incredible. At least 23 current or former congressional candidates in the 2020 election cycle have endorsed or promoted QAnon. Conspiracy theorists aren't the only fringe characters drawn to Trump rallies. The Oath Keepers, an anti-government group formed in 2009 after President Barack Obama's election, has been sending security volunteers to escort Trump supporters at rallies across the country. Conspiracy theories are nothing new, but experts fear the powerful engine of social media and a volatile political climate have ramped up the threat of violence. An FBI bulletin in May warned that conspiracy-driven extremists have become a domestic terrorism threat. The bulletin specifically mentions QAnon. So wow. The FBI is openly stating that conspiracy theory is now treading into domestic terrorism zones of concern. For more than 2 years, followers have pored over a tangled set of clues purportedly posted online by a high-ranking government official known only as Q. Many followers believe the late John F. Kennedy is a Trump supporter who faked his death in a 1999 plane crash. And look, I'm not ruling out any possibilities here, but you can see why theories like this are put out there so that a sentence like this can be put in a mainstream article to evoke feelings of incredulousness amongst the readers. Hopefully, by now you can all see the game that is played here. Another core belief is that thousands of deep state operatives and top Democrats, including Hillary Clinton and Obama, will be rounded up and sent to Guantanamo Bay during an event called The Storm. I've actually never heard that one before. Oh my goodness. I mean, this just really shows you the gullibility of people. I mean, come on. The Clintons and the Obamas are going to be sent to Guantanamo Bay? Get out of here, man. Oh my goodness. The first Q drop appeared on the 4chan image board in October 2017. The messages migrated to 8chan until a string of mass shootings by gunmen who posted manifestos on the site led to it getting forced offline in August. The disruption, which ended when the image board relaunched in November under the new name 8kun, hardly spelled the end of QAnon. People in the QAnon community feel like they are banding together to uncover the real truth behind the scenes, said View, who works as a marketer for a San Diego company, and says he uses the pseudonym to protect himself. His acerbic comments about what he calls an apocalyptic political cult have earned him more than 20,000 followers on Twitter and vitriol from QAnon believers. Before Trump's rally in Milwaukee, thousands waited in line for hours to enter the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee Panther Arena. Some wore apparel adorned with a Q or WWG1WGA. Wow, who knows what that stands for? Oh, which stands for the QAnon slogan, "Where we go one, we go all." The May 30th bulletin sent by the FBI's Phoenix field office warned of conspiracy theories inspiring violence by groups and individual extremists, according to an October court filing for a QAnon-related criminal investigation in Colorado. Police in the Denver suburb of Parker said Cynthia Abkug was accused of conspiring with QAnon supporters to kidnap her son from foster care. Abkug was arrested in Montana on December 30th and awaits extradition to Colorado. Internet-fueled conspiracies have already been linked to acts of real-world violence. And this is the story that I went into in the beginning here. A man charged with killing the reputed boss of the Gambino crime family last March showed off a QAnon symbol scrawled on his left hand during a court appearance. And as these things tend to go, I have not followed the QAnon scene at all, but I can only imagine that they would have the talking point of, oh yes, this is fake news. They put the Q on this guy's hand to discredit us, not seeing that it's all a part of the same agenda. But I would imagine that's how they would spin that. The same thing with the Comet Pizza thing that it's about to go into here. In 2017, a North Carolina man was sentenced to prison for firing a rifle in a Washington, D.C. pizza restaurant at the center of the debunked Pizzagate conspiracy theory that high-profile Democrats run a child sex trafficking ring out of the restaurant's non-existent basement. Pizzagate and other far-right conspiracy theories have faded, but experts see no end in sight to QAnon's popularity. Nancy Rosenblum, a Harvard University professor emeritus of ethics in politics and government, said the apocalyptic nature of the QAnon narrative resonates with those who want to believe that their political enemies will be vanquished and a better future will rise from the ashes. What makes it unique is that Trump is the chosen one, said Rosenblum. This is the same article that was picked up by ABC. So all the mainstream outlets are running with this right now. And it doesn't or shouldn't surprise that this is taking place as we get closer and closer to the presidential election. What began online more than 2 years ago as an intricate, if baseless, conspiracy theory that quickly attracted thousands of followers has since found footholds in the offline world. QAnon has surfaced in political campaigns, criminal cases, merchandising, and at least one college class. Last month, hundreds of QAnon enthusiasts gathered in a Tampa, Florida park to listen to speakers and pick up literature, and in England, a supporter of President Trump and the Brexit leader Nigel Farage raised a Q flag over a Cornish castle. And of course, Nigel Farage is the British Ron Paul, a controlled opposition figure. So no wonder that he's promoting the Q narrative. Big surprise. Most recently, the botched Iowa Democratic caucuses and the coronavirus outbreak have provided fodder for conspiracy mongering. QAnon fans shared groundless theories online linking the liberal billionaire George Soros to technological problems that hobbled the caucuses, and passed around bogus and potentially dangerous treatments for the virus. So this is kind of just going over the same stuff. Oh, but this is interesting. Matthew Lusk, who is running for unopposed, or who is running unopposed in the Republican primary for a Florida congressional seat and openly embraces QAnon, said in an email that its anonymous creator was a patriot who brings what the fake news will not touch without slanting. As for the theory's more extreme elements, Mr. Lusk said he was uncertain whether there really was a pedophile ring associated with the deep state. That being said, he added, I do believe there is a group in Brussels, Belgium that do eat aborted babies. This is a candidate for Congress that is now openly saying something like this to the press. Incredible. This is what that last paragraph that I read was referring to. QAnoners magic her for coronavirus. Just drink bleach. And they're referring to MMS, which is not technically the bleach that's in a container like this. It has a different molecular structure that is not actually bleach, but still it can be loosely categorized like that. QAnon YouTubers are telling people to drink bleach to ward off coronavirus. QAnon supporters are encouraging people to drink MMS, or Miracle Mineral Solution, a bleaching agent that has been touted as a miracle cure by anti-vaxxers and other fringe groups to ward off coronavirus. And despite restrictions on such content on platforms like YouTube, it nonetheless is fairly easy to find. So notice what's being done here. This is Rolling Stone, who is now associating QAnon with anti-vaxxers. So if you are a mother, father, parent of any kind, and you do not want to have your children vaccinated, well, now all of a sudden that belief is being lumped into QAnon and the quote-unquote far-right conspiracy theorist realm. So you can imagine a future as this continues, as events play out in the scripted fashion that they are designed to play out, where being against vaccination will make you a domestic terrorist. I mean, we just read how the FBI put out a bulletin where the QAnon movement could be leaning towards domestic terrorism realms. And now you have articles that are able to associate QAnon with anti-vaxxers and that pejorative label that the media puts on that idea. According to the Daily Beast, proponents of QAnon, the elaborate conspiracy theory purporting that President Donald Trump is waging a secret war against a ring of Democratic child sexual abusers, have been promoting MMS as a cure for coronavirus on Twitter, particularly the MMS branded 2020 spray, with one account alleging it kills viruses instantly. These plugs for MMS usually go hand in hand with general theories alleging that coronavirus was manufactured in a lab, usually by conspiracy theorist favorite Bill Gates, for the benefit of the pharmaceutical industry. As Rolling Stone reported last week, prominent QAnon supporter and YouTuber Jordan Sather bears much responsibility for perpetuating such claims. For those of you who don't know, Jordan Sather is one of the most obvious examples of controlled opposition on the internet, who is associated with Corey Goode, or at least used to be. I don't know if they're still associated. But you see here how the controlled opposition of YouTube works in tandem with the mainstream outlets to produce articles like this. This is the purpose that they serve. Do you think that anyone that would actually be dangerous to the narrative would be featured in Rolling Stone? I mean, come on, guys. Since the spread of the disease was initially reported, he has devoted his Twitter account to fomenting misinformation about the disease, inaccurately claiming that the virus was the product of a 2015 patent for avian coronavirus, and implying that it was created in a Chinese lab. In response to criticism that he was spreading dangerous medical misinformation, he doubled down on such claims, tweeting, "Chlorine dioxide is so deadly that you can buy tablets of it for $10 on Amazon to make water potable. And by their logic, we better get rid of the sun too because it can bleach. Chlorine dioxide can be helpful if used right. Mainstream media can't science." So there you go. You have this attitude, this energy that characters like this promote, this oppositional defiance that they promote, that is so easily played off of by outlets like Rolling Stone or any other mainstream publications, and they can point to these characters on YouTube as an example of what a QAnon conspiracy theorist is, who's also an anti-vaxxer and part of the far-right conspiracy theorist danger and domestic terrorism threat to this country. So I just wanted to go over all that real quick because it's a story that I've been following for a while now, and it's just interesting, as always, to watch how it morphs over time to titles like this: QAnon supporters and anti-vaxxers are spreading a hoax that Bill Gates created the coronavirus. And that's the thing, you know, there's a lot of truth in this headline under the surface, but every label and caricature that's been placed on top of it makes the whole thing seem absurd. And that, of course, is by design.